Alright, welcome back to Lenz Comic Corner, Classic Lesson Non-Classic. This episode number 2813. Doubleshot number 2707. First up, discussing a Superman Omnibus. Superman, the Triangle Heir Omnibus, Volume 1. Yes, I do know the fact the book is not released yet. It's not going to be released for a couple months. But there's nothing wrong with discussing the issues collected in it. Yes, the book itself collected. Get to it here. It collected from Superman Volume 2, issues 49 to 64, Avengers of Superman 472 to 486, Action Comics 589 to 573, and the first 8 issues of the fourth Superman title, launched at the time, Superman the Man of Steel. We are skipping over issues 49 to 52 because discussed those already, along with these following issues. I'm also skipping over. Let's see. I'm also skipping over Action Comics 659 to 662. Avengers Superman issues 472 to 475, and I'm also going to be discussing a couple of bonus issues because part of some storylines like 587 and also an issue of Lead Superheroes. So yeah, this covers about 8 months of Superman here. Yes, starting off with Superman Volume 2, Issue 53. And there will be some crossover, at least 2 crossovers with these issues. Oh yes, definitely. Starting off with Issue 53. Truth, Justice, and the American Way. Yeah, it's basically, it's the first appearance of a group named the Sons of Liberty. Yes. Well, the comic version anyways. The real life ones were different from something else. Yeah, it's all about dealing with Quark in this issue. And then moving next to Avengers Superman 476. 476 is part of a major storyline known as Time and Time Again, which basically took up issues of these books. Avengers Superman 476 to 478, Action Comics 663, 664, and Superman Volume 2 issues 54, 55. It's basically Superman going to time traveling, which also features the lead superheroes. Yes, the opening story here, I believe, was done by it's written and drawn by Dan Jurgens. It is, of course, we feature lead superheroes here. The main villain of the storyline is known as the Linear Man. Yes, and by the time the storyline wraps up, he dies. Yes, he seriously dies at the end of the storyline. Also involves basically Booster Gold in here too. Yes, because Dan Jurgens created him, so of course he features him in this book. And all this issue is just basically kicking off the storyline. And he ends up in 1943, where he runs into in this storyline he meets up with the JSA. Yep. Yeah, for a couple issues in here. Yeah, and then continues over into Superman Volume 2, 54. Yeah. We continue with basically this layer leads into going to conflict with basically the book actually ended with him basically up in Nazi Germany, where he basically he's standing in front of a Nazi train. Well, actually more like Germany. And of course there's a backup story in here with Newsboy Legion, which I don't know if that was collected in that trade here. So, and then continues over into 477, where basically then he goes to the future. Also throughout the storyline, for some reason Superman is not wearing his cape. Yeah, he loses his cape during the course of the storyline. He doesn't get a new one when the story wraps up. He even goes to with dinosaurs in Action Comics 664, which of course he deals with Kronos in here, the Adam villain. In 255, he goes to Camelot where he meets Etrigan the Demon. Yes, basically Camelot time, basically, because why not? And more stuff with the Newsboy Legion as the backup feature in this book. Of course, some of the stuff related to Jason Miller's book is later explained in a Demon book. The storyline itself kind of concludes with issue Avengers Superman number 478 with basically Superman in the future. And then the story continues over in Legion Superheroes Volume 4, 19, where the big thing of this issue is basically seeing the ruins of Metropolis. Yeah, that's kind of basically what it is here. It's loosely connected here. Like lots of ruins. And then move over to Action Comics 665, which it's the first issue not to deal with, basically. Plus, this. By the way, who's the writer of these issues? Well, in the case of Superman, that is done by Jerry. It's written and drawn by Jerry Ordway. Action Comics is done by Roger Stern and Bob McLean. So 665 is basically the aftermath of that story. That's basically all it is, and him taking on a character named Baron Sunday. Yeah, just a crime lord. Oh, and by the way, the Linear Man, he actually dies in the final storyline of the issue. Yeah, Baron Sunday himself. This will be his final appearance. He never appeared again after this issue. Nope. Yeah, and they apparently collect the first 5 issues of this thing in the trade itself for time and time again. Moving into issue 56, where this starts the Red Glass story arc, which starts here, continues over in Avengers Superman 479, and includes an issue of Action Comics. Where the whole thing in this storyline here, Superman somehow ends up in the future where everybody's dead. Like there's he thinks mixes my response to this, and he sees a skeleton of him in the Museum of Villains, and he keeps asking the question, "What the heck is going on here?" And nobody is telling him anything. We even see Lex Luthor appear in this storyline, even though at this point he's supposed to be dead, and he's here with the Iron Hand thing that he had prior to that. But it's a really interesting story here, and yeah, and of course still more Newsboy Legion stuff here, which awesome. In case you're curious though, what the heck is causing all this? It's this thing called the Red Glass, where Superman's basically, it's revealed in Action Comics 666 in the conclusion of the story arc that it's all dealing with this red glass stuff, and like the only way he knows is he hallucinating all this. He picks up a big hunk of kryptonite, and normally, he gets sick. Not this time. Where he actually is, get this. It turns out it's actually a device for NASA, because he's on the moon the whole time, and there's this red glass thing, and then, it's a weird story arc, and then we jump to a brand new ongoing series like Superman. Superman, the Man Still on the Run, written by Louise Simonson. Yes, this is the first new Superman title since 1986. Been a few years. It's a 48-page issue where it's basically him versus Cerberus. Yeah, it just Superman appears in his first issue here. And they're mostly put just regular villains just for Superman and Steel. Yeah. And then, by the way, it's an absolutely really fantastic issue. And it continues over in Superman number 57, where we deal with Return of the Eradicator. And this issue has got a bunch of artists on. We have Dan Jurgens 2 pages. It's a basically like a 25-page issue, with Dan Jurgens doing the first, actually like 38 pages, like about 40 pages this issue. First on pages 31, 38 is Dan Jurgens. John Boliva does 10, 13, 20, 23. Tom Grumman does 24, 26, 30. 12, 30, 12, 21 is Art Turbot, and Bob McLean does the rest. We have Jared Wood do some inking here too. Yeah, but it's an action-packed issue that leads into Super Avengers of Superman 480. Yes, which we still deal with him here. This also is the debut of a guy named Ron Turpert, who at one point married Lois Lane. Excuse me, Lucy Lane. Yep. Basically, this was a guy who just became a new reporter at the Daily Planet, and my guess is that Jared basically. By the way, this issue has got more artists on it. Like, yes, for this issue here, it's got for 540, it's 480. Excuse me. Jared Roy is on the writing here. He also has the inking this issue with Dan Jurgens, Tom Grumman, Kurt Swan, John Mooney, Jim Mooney, Art Turbot, Bob McLean, and the artwork for this one. Because it's basically Superman versus the Eradicator, so let's bring a whole lot of artists. And moving over to Superman 667, where they conclude the whole Eradicator storyline. And then moving on to the second ever issue for Superman, the Man of Steel. And if in case you're curious though, Louis Simonson would be the primary writer for this book for a lot of this book's existence, who ended up basically also writing another book this period of time, Steel. Actually, like not long after that anyways. Yes, where it continues with Cerberus in here. We have first friends of a character named Babe. Moving on to Superman 58. Or it's basically like Superman deal with the Bloodhounds. And then for Superman 481 is trying to catch a train while still with the parasite. Yes, these issues he finally deals with the parasites. Yeah, basically 481 has Parasite joining the Superman cast. And then 668 it's all about hauntings of Lex Luthor, and deals with, it's basically just, the best way to describe this issue is that it's set up for a future issue. Then we continue on to 663, Superman is number 3, where it's a tie-in to War of the Gods, and it's, I think, like the only issue taking place during the events of War of the Gods for Superman. Yeah, it's his only issue. I guess Louis Simonson probably says, hey, why the heck not? And then, oh, by the way, Superman does propose Lois Lane during the course of these issues, and actually Clark Kent does, and this issue mostly is just debut 2 linear men, Laurie Lee and Matt Ryder. Yeah, this issue was indirectly setting up the events of Armageddon 2001. Yep. And then we have 482, we have Superman fighting Parasite for the very first time in his career. And deal with, of course, Bruno Magnum and the Intergang. In 469, we have Thorne appear here. Yep. Moving on to Man number 4, where he fights off against Project Angstrom. Oh yeah, Parasite has been held captive, basically held in custody at Star Labs. And this will be Project basically Angstrom, this monster creature. This will be his sole appearance. He never appears again after this issue. And was collected to save Luthor's brain. Moving on to Superman 60, where Intergang is still active. And this issue noteworthy is the first appearance of Agent Liberty, who later got a one shot after this. Yes, he did. Yeah, he had a one shot released in the 90s, known as Agent Liberty Special, which this did not lead to an ongoing series. Agent Liberty himself was just basically like, it's like the best way to describe it is like it's like a brand new superhero, Operator Metropolis. It's like maybe they had plans for him, but never went through. And to move on to 483, we're almost done here, where basically we deal with the final appearance of a character named Blind Spot. Yep, we debuted in issue 44. This will be his final ever appearance. And we also get appearance by Slim Brady. Yes. Moving on to Action Comics 670, where this is the aftermath issue of the storyline Armageddon 2001. This also is the debut of Lex Luthor Jr., who was actually just a clone of Lex Luthor. Red hair, he's Australian, and Gretchen Kelly is rumored to be the mother, but not really. Not really at all. Yeah, it's like basically DC felt as though, let's wrap this up, because they said it's like they set up the events of Armageddon 2001. They planted seeds for in-end Superman, so why not have the epilogue be Superman? Why not? Well, the whole thing with this issue is basically just dealing with the aftermath of Armageddon 2001, all those interesting annuals. Though the ending itself was basically head scratching. Though this issue was also noteworthy for the debut of the second ever Atomic Skull. Yep, Joseph Martin. Yeah, he's the second ever Atomic Skull. Because the original one, his name was Albert Michaels, which of course, apparently in post-crisis, he was basically like, best way to describe this guy, he was basically like a character on a movie. It's like he was a movie character. And the whole thing with Joseph Martin, he's basically like a film, he's basically a fan of films. And he basically is a fan of the Atomic Skull character. So he becomes Atomic Skull and fights Superman because he's also obsessed with Lois Lane. Yes, and the story continues over in Man of Steel 5, where basically it's like one is the movie, and then the other side is basically his fight with Superman. And that's pretty much the whole issue for Superman number 5. It's really good. I thoroughly enjoyed it. And yes, Louis Simon does still as with the late Kurt Swan. Moving on to Superman, Volume 261, where we have sort of a follow-up to Time and Time Again, with Time and Time Again, or with more time travel stuff with 61, and move on to Avengers Superman 564, before 484. And this begins a 5-part story arc known as Blackout, where Superman is on evolved this little virtual reality thing. We have Jerry Ordway and Dan Jurgens on this thing, where Superman briefly gets amnesia and a desert island gets. And by the way, a lot of these women in the desert island have basically are topless. So at one point you have Superman look like about Superman also has lost his shirt. He's wearing a headband, and he attempts to get married to this other person, but the wedding's called off pretty quickly. It gets wrapped up in issue 62 of Superman. It's a really quick story arc here. And then Age of Liberty's story continues over in a special, which I may discuss at some point. And then continue over to 585, which I think is more like the aftermath of this story arc. Yes. And then we have 672, which is the first appearance of Team Luthor. Yes. A group of people who work with Luthor. Yeah. Yeah, it's like making Lex Luthor Jr. a good guy for 672. Moving on to Superman issue number 7. where it's like storm weather. Yeah, and also this kind of leads into Lana Lang marrying Pete Ross. Moving on to Superman 63, where he teams up with Aquaman. And this takes place during the first issue of Aquaman Volume 4. And this establishes a retcon the Lord of Monsters survived the events of Crisis on Infinite Earth. That's basically the big gist of this issue. Moving on to 486, which was the last issue published in the trade. I'm also going to do 587 as well. It's basically still dealing with Intergang. There's also a thing called the Purge, a robot that was just destroyed in this issue. Moving on to Action Comics 673, which is the final issue published in an Omnibus, where this is basically, last few issues it's basically Superman with Christmas. Yes, it's like that's a big thing related to these final issues. It's basically a bunch of Christmas issues and the more big beefy guys. 64, this is more dealing with Christmas stuff. It's like set at Christmas time. And then we conclude this with 587, which is, for some reason, was not collected on this, but yet I'm going to talk about it anyways. It's more Christmas stuff. And that's it for all the stuff here. All these issues are pretty good. I thoroughly enjoyed these issues, per se. And I'm going to give this omnibus a 10 out of 10. Next up we have is an actual Superman trade. You're probably thinking, which one? And that one is Superman Emperor Joker. Yes, the Ultra Reality ish. Now here's the weird thing. It's like this storyline is supposed to be for Batman, but hey, Joker fights Superman too. So basically, these are your writers for these issues. We have Jeff Loeb, Jay Matias, Martin Schwartz, and Joe Kelly. Art by Amadeus, Mark W. Miller, Doug Mankey, Kanto, Doug Carew, Todd Ned, Carl Robbie, and Scott McDaniel. This book, it collects Superman Volume 2 issues 160 and 161, Adventure Superman 582 to 583, Superman the Man of Steel 104 and 105, Action number 667, 667, 770, and the Emperor Joker one shot. I think it starts out with Superman basically wearing his black suit with a cape, and the whole world has been altered. And it's not so halfway through the whole story, it's just, oh, Joker is in charge, and Mixie's is just annoying him throughout this whole thing. And also, he has to go look for Batman. Yes, he has to look for Batman in these issues. Because, of course, he does. And